Black woman wounded a stranger. Everything changes when he's revealed as a billionaire. Sometimes life gets hard. People leave, hearts break, and we feel lost. But here at Piece of Fiction, we believe in second chances, in love that comes back, in families that heal, and in hope that shines after the storm. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. You're not just a viewer, you're part of our family now. In a small house near the ocean, a young woman named Lyra Bloom was on her knees. Her hands were steady as she wrapped bandages around the hurt foot of a man named Thorn Kane. He was a stranger, and his bright blue eyes looked like they were hiding many secrets. Outside, rain was falling hard and the wind was loud, but inside the cottage, it was quiet and warm. There was a feeling of trust growing between them. Who was this man who had crashed his car on a lonely road? And why was Lyra, a 24-year-old woman with big dreams, helping him even though she didn't know him? This is a story about being brave, kind, and finding love when you least expect it. Will Lyra's kindness help Thorn open up? Will one kind act change everything? Let's find out together. The storm hit the little town of Havenport hard. The wind screamed and the rain fell like tiny, sharp needles. In a small cafe by the sea, Lyra Bloom stood behind the counter. She was 24 years old, and her long, wavy hair moved as she scrubbed a coffee stain. Her dark eyes looked out the window. A red light from the cafe sign blinked against the stormy sky. It was late, past midnight. The diner was empty. The only sounds were the humming fridge and the loud rain. Lyra was tired from working all night, but she couldn't relax. The storm felt different, like something big was going to happen. She stopped when she saw a strange light through the rain. Headlights were moving strangely on the cliff road above the cafe. Her heart beat faster. No one drove on that dangerous road during a storm. Then the lights disappeared. Lyra heard a loud crash, metal hitting rock. The storm swallowed the sound quickly. Lyra froze. Someone might be hurt. The warm cafe suddenly felt too quiet. She dropped her cleaning rag and grabbed her green raincoat. "Stay here, Muffin," she told her sleepy cat who was lying on a stool. Then she rushed outside. The rain soaked her jeans and sneakers right away. The wind pulled at her coat. The road to the cliffs was half a mile uphill. It was wet and slippery. Her chest hurt from running, but she didn't stop. She was scared, but she had to help. Lyra had lived in Havenport her whole life. She knew the cliffs very well. She knew every turn and how close they were to the sea. At the top, she saw it. A black car. The front was smashed against a broken guardrail. It was close to the edge of the cliff. Smoke came from the hood. Lyra's stomach twisted. She ran to the driver's side. Through the broken window, she saw a man. He looked about 28 years old. Blood ran down from his forehead and into his dark hair. But his chest moved. He was alive. Even in pain, he looked very handsome with a strong jaw and sharp cheekbones. "Hey!" Lyra yelled, banging on the window. "Can you hear me?" The man opened his eyes. They were blue and shiny. He looked at her. "Help," he said softly. Lyra tried to open the door, but it was stuck. She felt scared, but tried to stay calm. The window was cracked. She grabbed a rock from the ground and hit the glass. It broke into pieces. Rain poured into the car. "Stay with me," she shouted, reaching inside. She unlocked the door and pushed it open. It made a loud sound. The man groaned. His body leaned against her. He was very tall and heavy. His nice suit was wet and torn. Blood was on his left shoe and his foot was badly hurt. It was stuck under the dashboard. "I'm going to get you out," she said. She pulled on his leg. He cried out in pain. "Sorry," she whispered. She felt bad. He leaned on her, his arms over her shoulders. She helped him out of the car. Her muscles hurt from holding him. The car made a scary sound, and she knew they had to move. "Let's go," she told him. He limped beside her. He looked like he was in a lot of pain, but he didn't let go. "What's your name?" she asked. "Thorn," he said softly. His voice was tired and smooth. They walked slowly. The cafe was far behind them now. Lyra knew an ambulance wouldn't get there in time. Her little house was a mile away. That was their only hope. She held Thorn tighter. His breathing was rough. The storm was mean, but Lyra was kind. She was going to help him no matter what. The rain hit Lyra's face as she walked. Thorn leaned on her. He was shaking, his hurt foot dragged behind. The lights of the cafe were gone now. Only darkness and rain were around them. Lyra's muscles burned. Her coat was soaked and stuck to her body. But she didn't stop. Thorn was warm beside her, even in the cold storm. She didn't know him. She didn't know why he had crashed. But he needed her, and she wouldn't let him down. "Stay with me, Thorn," she said. The wind was so loud, but her voice was strong. His head leaned against her. His face was pale and bloody. "Trying," he said, his voice weak. The path dipped. It was muddy, and his leg gave out. Lyra caught him just in time. Her heart pounded. He was tall and strong under his torn suit, but right now he was hurt and needed her. Lyra thought about her life in Havenport. She worked hard at the cafe. She dreamed about planting a big garden for everyone. She spent quiet nights with her cat. She had faced hard times before, but nothing like this. Now she had someone else's life to care for. Thorn mumbled something she couldn't understand. He leaned on her more. "Talk to me," she said. "Where are you from?" He gave a tiny laugh. "Far from here. Too far." Lyra felt curious because the man wasn't telling her much, but she didn't have time to ask questions right now. Through the heavy rain, she finally saw her small cottage. A single light glowed from the window like a little star. Lyra quickly kicked the door open. The wooden floor made its usual creaky sound as she helped Thorn inside. The living room was warm and cozy, very different from the cold, wet storm outside. Muffin, her cat, sat on the couch. She looked at them with her bright green eyes, surprised by the noise. Lyra helped Thorn into an old armchair. He let out a groan as he sat down. His face was very handsome, even though it was covered in blood and dirt. He looked like he was in pain. His blue eyes were cloudy, but he was awake. "You're safe now," Lyra said, breathing hard. Her curly hair was dripping water onto the floor. She took off her wet coat, showing her damp sweater and jeans. Then she grabbed a towel from the kitchen. Thorn's left foot was hurt the most. His sock was soaked with blood. The cut from the car crash was worse than she thought. "I need to look at this," Lyra said, kneeling in front of him. Thorn nodded. His jaw was tight, like he was trying not to cry. She gently pulled off his shoe, and he hissed in pain. The cut looked really bad and messy, but it wasn't too deep. Lyra's hands were steady. She had helped many people at the cafe when they got hurt. She knew what to do. She took her first aid kit from under the sink. It had been used many times to help the fishermen in town. "This will sting a little," she said as she poured medicine on the cut. Thorn held onto the chair tightly. His knuckles turned white, but he didn't yell or move away. "I've had worse," he said, trying to smile just a little. As Lyra cleaned the wound, she looked at him closely. His suit was ruined, but she could tell it was very fancy and expensive. It didn't fit in with the small, simple town of Havenport. Who was this man, driving alone during a storm? His blue eyes kept watching her. They made her heart beat faster. He looked like he had many secrets. Lyra wrapped his foot in white bandages. Her fingers touched his skin, and a warm feeling passed between them. "You're good at this," Thorn said softly. His voice was kind and gentle. Lyra gave a small smile. "I've had practice. In Havenport, we help people who trip or fall." Thorn gave a tiny smile back, but he still looked pale and tired. Lyra worried it might be because of blood loss or shock. She wiped her hands and gave him a dry towel. "Keep your foot up," she said, pointing to a little stool. Muffin the cat jumped onto the table and purred, brushing against Thorn's arm. "Is that your guard cat?" Thorn asked with a smile, trying to be funny even though he was hurt. Lyra laughed, and it made the room feel lighter. "Muffin is the boss of this house," she said. She went to the kitchen and started making tea. Her hands shook a little. The storm outside was still loud, making the windows rattle. But inside, things were quiet and calm, at least for now. Thorn kept looking at her from the armchair. His eyes followed her every move. He looked thankful, but also like he was hiding something. Lyra felt it too. This wasn't just about helping a stranger. Something bigger was going on, and she was already a part of it. Outside, the storm began to slow down. The cottage was quiet, but inside the air felt heavy, like something important was about to happen. Lyra stood at the kitchen counter. Her hands trembled a little as she poured hot water into a chipped mug. The smell of chamomile tea filled the room. Thorn sat in the armchair, his foot on the stool. His sharp blue eyes watched her. The lamp's light made shadows on his face. There was a cut on his forehead and a little stubble on his chin. He was very handsome, but his eyes made her feel strange. He looked thankful but also scared or sad. Lyra had pulled him out of a car crash and brought him through the storm. She had bandaged his foot, but now that they were safe inside, she felt nervous. Who was this man, really? She handed him the mug. Their fingers touched for a moment. It was warm and made her pull her hand back. "Drink this," she said, trying to sound calm. "It will help you feel better." Thorn smiled a little. "My nerves aren't the problem," he whispered. His voice was deep but soft, and he still sounded tired. He took a sip and winced when he moved his foot. The white bandage stood out against his messy, ripped suit. Muffin stretched out on the table and stared at Thorn like she was curious too. Lyra crossed her arms and looked at him. Even dirty and hurt, his suit still looked like it came from someone rich. Nothing about him matched the small town. Who is he really? Lyra wondered. "You're staring," Thorn said, trying to joke. But his eyes were serious. "I have a right to stare." "You're a stranger in my house," she answered. He chuckled, and it made the room feel better. But the smile didn't reach his eyes. She sat down on the couch across from him. Her damp hair hung around her shoulders. "So, Thorn Kane," she said, pretending to be light and funny, "are you going to tell me why you were driving like a madman in the storm?" Thorn's smile faded. He gripped the mug tightly. "Bad night," he said quickly, like he didn't want to talk about it. Lyra raised her eyebrows. She had seen many quiet, secretive people at her cafe, fishermen, drifters, and loners. She knew when someone was hiding something. She got up and went to the kitchen for a bowl of warm water and a clean cloth. "Let's clean the cut on your head," she said, not letting him change the subject. She knelt next to him and gently dabbed the cut on his temple. Her touch was careful and kind. At first, Thorn stiffened, but then he relaxed. His breath felt warm on her wrist. Up close, his face looked both strong and soft. His cheekbones were sharp, but pain made him look gentle. His blue eyes seemed to hide their own storm. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. Lyra looked at him and didn't blink. "And you didn't have to crash near my cafe. But here we are." This time, Thorn gave a real smile. It was small but warm. Lyra's heart jumped a little. She hadn't expected it to feel like that. As she worked, the quiet between them felt heavy, not awkward, but full of something, like the air before a thunderstorm. Muffin jumped into Thorn's lap and started purring loudly. Her paws kneaded his leg. "Traitor," Lyra muttered, and Thorn laughed. The sound was warm and nice. "She knows quality when she sees it," he teased, petting the cat. Lyra rolled her eyes, but she smiled. She finished cleaning his cut and put on a small bandage. Her fingers stayed a little longer than they needed to. Thorn looked at her closely. It felt like he was trying to remember her face forever. "Thank you, Lyra," he said. He said her name so softly it made her feel a shiver, not from the cold, from something else. Lyra stood up and started fixing the first aid kit. She didn't look at Thorn. "You need to rest," she said, glancing at the clock. It was almost 2 a.m. "You can sleep on the couch. I'll get some blankets." Thorn nodded, but he kept looking at her. His eyes were full of questions he didn't ask. As Lyra walked to the closet, she could feel him there, like a quiet drumbeat. Who was this man with fancy clothes and sad eyes? Why did his car crash feel like something more than just a simple accident? Lyra's life used to be simple. She worked, dreamed about planting a community garden, and spent quiet nights with her cat Muffin. But now Thorncane was in her home and everything felt different. She came back with a quilt and gently placed it over him. Their eyes met again. They didn't speak, but something passed between them. Outside, the storm was calming down, but inside Lyra's small cottage, a new storm was starting. And Lyra didn't know if she was ready for it. The next morning came slowly to Havenport. The big storm had turned into a soft rain tapping on Lyra's windows. Inside the house, it smelled like chamomile tea and medicine. It reminded Lyra of the crazy night before. Lyra stood at the stove, stirring oatmeal. The spoon made a soft clinking sound that helped her feel calm. Across the room, Thorn was sitting on the couch. His foot was wrapped in bandages and resting on a stool. He had a quilt over his shoulders, as he wasn't wearing his fancy clothes anymore. Now he wore an old flannel shirt and sweatpants Lyra had found in a box. They had belonged to her brother a long time ago. Thorn looked a little softer in the morning light, but his blue eyes were sharp and careful. Lyra had helped him, but he still felt like a mystery. Every time he looked at her, it felt like a puzzle piece she couldn't figure out. She put oatmeal into 2 bowls and added some honey. Muffin, her tabby cat, jumped onto a chair and looked at Thorn with sleepy eyes. "Breakfast," Lyra said, placing a bowl in front of Thorn. "Eat. You need it." Thorn gave a tiny smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Bossy," he said playfully, but he picked up the spoon and started eating slowly. Lyra sat across from him. She didn't touch her food. She watched him closely. Last night had felt close and caring, but now the sunlight brought new questions. Who was Thorncane? And why had his car crashed on Havenport's cliff? She spoke in a calm but curious voice. "You said last night was bad. Want to tell me more?" Thorn stopped eating and looked uncomfortable. "Not much to say," he said. His voice was smooth, too smooth. "Took a wrong turn. Bad weather." Lyra leaned forward, her long wavy hair falling to the side. "You took a wrong turn in a car that costs more than I'll pay in rent for 10 years? Try again." Thorn chuckled softly. It sounded like he respected her boldness. "You're sharp, Lyra." She didn't laugh. "And you're not answering." The air felt heavy, not angry, just full of words that hadn't been said. Lyra wasn't just curious. She needed to know if she was in danger. Thorn put his spoon down and looked her in the eyes. "I'm in business. Things got messy. I needed to clear my head. So I drove." His words were polished, like something he had practiced. Lyra had heard a lot of stories working at the cafe. She could tell he wasn't telling everything. Just then, Thorn's phone buzzed loudly. It was cracked but still working. He looked at the screen, his jaw tightening. He turned off the phone quickly. Lyra noticed. "Trouble?" she asked softly. "Nothing I can't handle," he replied. But the way his eyes looked worried told her otherwise. She stood up and began clearing the bowls. She needed to move. "You're not going anywhere with that foot," she said, looking at his bandage. "Stay here." "Doctor's orders." Thorn raised an eyebrow. "You're a doctor now?" Lyra smiled. "I'm all you've got." As she washed dishes, she talked more, hoping he would open up. She told him about her job at the cafe and her dream to start a garden to help people in town. "This town's tough," she said, drying her hands, "but it's home. People here need more than just getting by." Thorn listened. His face softened. Her honest words seemed to reach him. "You really believe in that," he said. "Someone has to," she answered, looking him in the eyes. Suddenly, the phone buzzed again. It was loud in the quiet room. Thorn's hand moved slightly, but he didn't answer. His fingers curled into a fist. Lyra's stomach turned. Whoever was calling wasn't going to stop. She walked to the window and looked out. The cliff road was empty. But the silence in the room felt heavy. She turned to him. "Thorn," she said, If you're in trouble, I need to know. I didn't pull you out of a car wreck just to get pulled into something dangerous. Thorne looked into her eyes. There was something there, maybe guilt. You're safe, he said. His voice was strong, but it also sounded a little forced. I promise. But Lyra wasn't sure. A promise from a stranger didn't feel strong enough. Her heart beat faster. Was he telling the truth? She handed him a glass of water. Their fingers touched for a second. That spark from last night came back, surprising them both. Outside, the rain got heavier. Inside, the little cottage felt tighter, full of questions neither of them could answer yet. Rain kept falling over Havenport. It wrapped everything in soft gray. Lyra stood at the sink, washing breakfast dishes. The sound of the cups clinking helped her focus. Thorne sat on the couch with his bandaged foot up. The big flannel shirt looked too big on him. His phone, still cracked, sat on the table. It buzzed again. It was the third time that hour. Every time it buzzed and he ignored it, the air in the room got tenser. Lyra was trying to stay patient, but it was getting harder. She had saved him. She brought him inside her home during a storm, but his secrets were starting to feel like a problem. She glanced at him and saw how his jaw was tight. His eyes kept flicking to the window, like he was waiting for someone to come. Thorne, she said, drying her hands. Her voice was calm, but it had a sharp edge now. That phone is going to burn a hole in my table if you keep ignoring it. He looked at her, but his smile faded when she stared back at him. It's nothing, he said quickly, moving his hand toward the small device on the table. Lyra crossed her arms. Her wavy hair moved as she stepped closer. Nothing doesn't cause this much trouble. Who is looking for you? She asked. Thorne didn't say anything. His silence was the answer. He had secrets. Secrets Lyra wasn't sure she wanted to know. Just then her cat Muffin, a fluffy tabby, jumped onto the windowsill. Her tail flicked like she could feel something was wrong. Lyra's stomach felt strange. She had been through tough times before, but this felt different. This was personal. It was about the man she had saved. Before Thorne could answer, a low sound filled the quiet room. It wasn't thunder. It was a car engine. Lyra's heart jumped. She ran to the window and looked through the rain. A black SUV was sitting on the small road outside. Its windows were dark, and it looked scary against the peaceful town of Havenport. Two men in dark suits stepped out of the car. They moved in a serious and careful way. Thorne's face turned pale. He grabbed the arm of the couch. They're here, he whispered. His voice was quiet and full of fear. Lyra turned quickly to him. Her heart was beating fast. Who are they? She asked, her voice strong and serious. Thorne looked at her with wide eyes. For the first time, she saw the man behind the smile. He looked scared and trapped. I need to explain, Thorne said. But before he could say more, there was a loud knock on the door. Lyra's instincts told her to protect her home. A deep voice called from outside, cold and official. Mr. Kane, we know you're in there. Lyra's fists tightened. She didn't know much about Thorne's world, but she knew her own. No one pushed their way into her home. She walked to the door, ignoring Thorne's warning. Lyra, don't. She opened the door. Two tall men in suits stood there. He's not going anywhere, she said, her voice sharp and strong. The taller man looked at her with no expression. Miss, this doesn't concern you, he said. It does now. You're standing on my porch, Lyra answered, her bravery burning bright from everything that had happened that night. Thorne stood up slowly, leaning on the couch. He limped to her side and gently touched her arm. They're not enemies, he said. His voice was tired, but calm. They're my security. Lyra looked at his face carefully. Security for what? She asked. He let out a long breath. I'm Thorne Everhart. I'm the CEO of Everhart Enterprises. A billionaire, technically. The words hit Lyra hard. A billionaire? In her little house? Suddenly, the black SUV, the suits, it all made sense, but it only made things feel stranger. What about the car crash? She whispered. Thorne looked down. He looked guilty. I was running away. A business deal went bad. Some people got angry. I thought I could disappear for one night. His words were honest and made her heart hurt a little. One of the security men stepped closer. Mr. Everhart, we need to leave. Now. Lyra didn't move. He's hurt, she said. He stays until a doctor says it's okay. The man paused. He wasn't used to people saying no to him, but he gave a small nod. We'll wait outside, he said. The door closed. Lyra turned to Thorne, her heart full of mixed feelings. You should have told me, she said, her voice tight. Thorne sat down, looking tired and worn. I didn't want to pull you into my problems, he said. Lyra shook her head and walked into the kitchen to calm herself. It's too late for that. Outside, the rain tapped the windows gently. Inside, the storm was still strong. Thorne's world was big and full of danger. And now Lyra was in the middle of it. She stood by the door, her heart beating fast. Her dark eyes were full of fire as she stared at the two men in suits. The black SUV was still outside, big and scary on her quiet street. Thorne sat on the couch with his foot up. He watched her with surprise and worry. The truth that he was Thorne Everhart, a billionaire running from trouble, still echoed in her mind. She had pulled him from a car crash, helped him through a storm, and now she was standing like a shield in front of him. Lyra was brave. Her courage was strong from living in Havenport. Miss, said the taller man, please step aside. Mr. Everhart needs to leave. Lyra clenched her fists and stood tall. Her wavy hair moved around her face. He's not a box you can carry away, she said. He's hurt, and I say he stays. The man looked at her. He wasn't used to being told no, but Lyra stood firm. Her little house with its creaky floors and old furniture was hers. No one was going to scare her in her own home. Thorne spoke up, his voice tired but clear. Lyra, they're here to help me. She looked at him again. Help you from what? She asked. He didn't answer at first. The silence was heavy. Then the second man stepped forward. We have orders. He's not safe here. Lyra laughed, but not because she was happy. Safe? He was safer lying in a ditch than going with you. Thorne flinched like her words hurt him. The taller man sighed. Ma'am, you don't understand. Then explain it, Lyra snapped, and get off my porch. Muffin the cat hissed loudly from the window like she agreed. The men looked at each other, surprised, but they didn't leave. Outside, the SUV's engine was still running. It sounded like a growling monster. Thorne stood up again, limping to Lyra's side. They're not bad guys, he said softly. His hand gently touched her arm. It made her feel calm. They work for me. The crash wasn't just an accident. Bad people are after me. People who don't forgive. I thought I could run away. Lyra gasped. His world was crashing into hers. What kind of bad people? She asked. He looked nervous but answered, people I did business with. I made a mistake. They got angry. I wanted to disappear. He wasn't just someone rich. He was someone who needed help, and she had helped him. The taller man spoke again. Mr. Everhart, we need to take you somewhere safe. Lyra stood in front of them. He's not leaving until a doctor checks him, she said. If you want him to stay alive, you wait. Her voice was shaking, not from fear but from anger. The men looked at her. Then the shorter one nodded. We'll call a doctor, but we stay nearby. They walked back to the SUV, leaving the door half open. Rain blew in, cold and damp. Lyra closed it and turned to Thorne. He was back on the couch, looking more tired than ever. You didn't have to do that, he said softly. Lyra crossed her arms. Yes, I did. You're not their toy, and I'm not their welcome mat. Thorne smiled, a real smile this time. You're amazing, Lyra Bloom, he said. When he said her name like that, so kindly, her cheeks got warm. She looked away and walked to the kitchen to get some water. Don't try to sweet-talk me, she said. But her heart was fluttering. She had stood up to his scary world, and it felt big and important. When she gave him the glass of water, their fingers touched. That small touch made her remember the spark from the first night they met. It was real and strong. Thorne looked into her eyes and said quietly, I owe you everything. Lyra swallowed hard, her heart full. "Just don't make me sorry," Lyra said, half smiling and half serious. Outside, the big SUV's headlights shone through the rain. It reminded Thorne that his big, busy world was waiting for him. But inside Lyra's small, warm cottage, something special was starting to grow. It was something gentle and strong, a trust between them, a bond, something real. Lyra looked out the window, her thoughts running fast. The medic would come to help Thorne. But what would happen after that? Thorne had enemies out there, and now she had stood up to them. She knew it. There was no turning back now. Whatever came next, she was part of it. She was in. The sun peeked out from the clouds over the little town of Havenport. Its golden light touched Lyra Bloom's cottage. Flowers were blooming, and the air smelled like fresh soil and the salty sea. Many days had gone by since Lyra stood strong against Thorne Kane's security team. That moment had changed everything. It made a deep trust between Lyra and Thorne, a trust they couldn't ignore. The medic had checked Thorne and said his foot was healing well. Lyra had taken care of him. Then he left for the city to fix some big problems with a business deal that went wrong. He told her, "I'll come back." Lyra returned to her life. She worked her shifts at the cafe by the sea and dreamed about her little garden for the town. But she missed Thorne. She missed his kind smile and his blue eyes. Even though she had saved him from that car accident, he had done something to her heart too. He had given her hope, a hope she had kept hidden for a long time. One morning, the town of Havenport was extra busy. Something was happening. Lyra stepped outside, her curly hair flying in the breeze, and she froze. The sleepy main street was now full of shiny cars. People were carrying boxes of plants, garden tools, and wooden benches. Lyra's neighbors stood around, whispering and looking at her. At the center of it all stood Thorne. He wasn't wearing her borrowed flannel shirt anymore. He looked neat and strong in a nice jacket, but his smile was still the same, warm and kind. He had healed. He walked with confidence, but when he looked at her, Lyra saw the same softness in his eyes that she had seen in her cottage. "Lyra!" he called out. His voice was strong and clear, even through the noise. "Come see what you started." Lyra's heart began to race. She walked toward him and the people stepped aside. And then she saw it. Right in front of her was a big garden. Rows of baby plants, tall trellises for flowers, and a shiny sign that said, "Lyra's Haven." It was her dream, but real. Thorne pointed to the people working in the garden. His company's workers were helping the town folks. Everyone was planting, laughing, and working together. "You inspired this," Thorne said softly, stepping close. "Your kindness and courage, that's why I'm here." Lyra looked around the garden, then at Thorne. Her voice shook as she whispered, "You did this?" He nodded. "For you, for Havenport." The people around them clapped and cheered. But to Lyra, it felt like it was just the two of them standing in that garden. Thorne gently took her hand. His touch made her heart feel warm. He led her to a small bench under a pretty tree with pink buds. "I faced my enemies," he said quietly. "The deal is done now, but it was hard. I felt lost, Lyra, until you pulled me from that wreck. You didn't just save me, you gave me a reason to live." Lyra held her breath. His words made her heart soft. She had built a wall around her heart after getting hurt before. But now, piece by piece, those walls were coming down. Thorne took something from his pocket. It was a little velvet box. Lyra's heart thumped as he opened it. Inside was a silver pendant, shaped like a tiny seedling. It was small, strong, and beautiful. "This isn't a ring," Thorne said, looking into her eyes. "You don't need promises to shine, but this is for the woman who planted hope in me." He stepped even closer, his voice shaking just a little. "Lyra Bloom, will you marry me? Not the rich man, but the man you saw when no one else did." Lyra felt tears in her eyes. She was scared, but also happy. She thought of that stormy night, her cozy cottage, and the bond they had made. "Your trouble, Thorne Kane," she said, smiling through her tears. But yes, 1,000 times yes. The whole town cheered. The garden was full of joy and laughter. Lyra wiped her tears as Thorn gently placed the necklace around her neck. His fingers brushed her skin and she felt warm all over. They stood together, holding hands. People came up, giving hugs and happy wishes. A neighbor's child walked by carrying Lyra's cat, Muffin, who let out a silly meow, making everyone laugh. Around them, the garden bloomed. It showed Lyra's dream and Thorn's love. The plants weren't just in the ground, they were growing in everyone's hearts. That evening, as the sun went down behind the cliffs, Lyra and Thorn sat on the bench. The garden was quiet, with just the sound of leaves dancing in the wind. "You changed everything," Thorn said. He put his arm around her and spoke gently. Lyra leaned against him. The silver pendant rested on her chest, cool and smooth. "We changed each other," she said, smiling at the sky. She had never wished for fame or money. All she wanted was a place where kindness could grow. Now with Thorn, she had even more than that. A partner, a purpose, a home. The stars began to twinkle. The cliffs of Havenport stood tall and calm, and Lyra knew this moment was real. Their love, just like the garden, was alive. Its roots would grow deep forever, part of their shared story. Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Check out our other videos too. See you in the next one.